The Executive of the Year award is an interesting award among all of the NBA awards that are given out. And the reason that I say that is because it's generally not indicative of who is truly the best executive in the league per se over the course of what they have been able to do over their whole careers. It's really based on the moves and transactions that were completed in an offseason or midseason trades and how a team performed or improved from the prior season alone. Like, really, so much rides on this decision of who should win the award based on how a team does in a single season compared to the prior season. Like, keep in mind, Gar Forman, yes, Gar Forman won the Executive of the Year award for the Bulls back in 2011. This was the same year that Tom Thibodeau won the Coach of the Year and Derrick Rose won MVP. And it was because the Bulls had gone from being the 8th seed in the East, a 500 team the year prior, to the best team in the league, finishing the season with 62 wins. But really, outside of bringing in Carlos Boozer, Ronnie Brewer, and Kyle Korver over that offseason, a lot of what made that Bulls team so great in 2011 were all of the players that were drafted before that season and developing them into the team they were going into that season. Guys like Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, Taj Gibson. That team was on the up and up in those seasons prior, but because they made that drastic jump in performance from the 8th seed to the number 1 seed, winning 62 games, that was the narrative that mattered for Gar Forman winning Executive of the Year. Don't get me wrong, the roster that was constructed that season was great and is what made that Bulls team so great, but I think we can all agree Gar Forman was not the best executive and made a lot of very, very bad moves throughout his career, which ultimately led to him getting fired. Now, why does any of this matter? Well, as I'm sure most of you have seen by now, yesterday it was announced that Zach Kleiman was named Executive of the Year for the Memphis Grizzlies, and I saw a lot of Bulls fans up in arms saying the Bulls' own Arturas Karnisovas should have won that award because based on what he was able to accomplish in overhauling this roster in a matter of one season and the progress the Bulls had made from going to an East bottom feeder to a playoff team and made the Bulls relevant again, that he, again, should have won that award. So in today's video, I want to talk about why the Executive of the Year award is misleading and discuss whether Artūras should have won that award compared to what Zach Kleiman was able to do. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, in case you missed my last video, I was very honored to have Stacey King on the channel to talk about the Bulls season, or the past season I should say, this upcoming off season, as well as talk about his time with the Bulls back in the 90s. It was quite a trip for me to be able to talk to a former player and now TV commentator, so make sure you check it out. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well as on the end screen of this one. I'll try and have more guests on the channel throughout this off season for you guys, so let me know in the comments who else you would like to see come on the show, and I will do my best to see if I can make it happen. But anyway, let's get back into the topic. So the votes came in for the Executive of the Year. As I mentioned, Zach Kleiman won the award for the first time and won it pretty handily, as you can see from the results, a total of 85 points, 16 first place votes, while you see in second, tied in second I should say, was our own Arturas Karnisovas with Coby Altman, both with a total of 27. AK did in fact even receive one first place vote. Now, I'll more or less reiterate what I said at the top of the video, but the reason this award is generally flawed is because it only takes into account one season and what an executive has been able to do based on the team's performance in a regular season. And unlike the rest of the NBA awards, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, all of these awards can be accurately based on a single season's performance. It doesn't always end up being correct. Every now and then you see a player win the award that might have been questionable compared to their competition, but it's a single season award. Whereas what executives are doing, front offices and their jobs are long-term focused. Moves they make in a given season or off season are not done only looking at the current season in question. No, they're looking at 3, 4, 5 years beyond in building and constructing a consistently good winning team. So it's really hard to quantify who exactly is deserving of the Executive of the Year award when you're only looking at one season. So that in and of itself is why I have a problem with this award and why I think it's misleading when you look at the awards for which they have been given in years past. Now, as far as this year, and this year's winner being that of Zach Kleiman of the Memphis Grizzlies, I mean, I don't really take issue with this. Like, I know Bulls fans aren't going to like to hear that, and I know so many feel that AK should have won this award. And there's no doubt in my mind that had Bulls continued on the run for which they were playing pre-All-Star break and finished this season with a top 3 seed, no question AK would have won the award. Because again, these types of awards, it's all about the story. the story of a team's drastic improvement from last season to this season. And when you go from a Bulls team that was a lottery team, a team that didn't even make the play-in last year, and a team that was just 2 years ago one of the worst in the league, still rebuilding, you take that team to being one of the top teams in the league in a matter of one offseason and making big moves by going for DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, and of course trading for Vucevic in the trade deadline from last season. Yeah, that's a story that brings headlines. That's a story of a team that was an afterthought to relevancy, that is worthy of an executive winning this award. The problem, Will, with that, the Bulls fell off dramatically after the All-Star break. Whether that was the executive's fault or not because of injuries to the team, scheduling, etc., it doesn't really matter in the eyes of the league. What you see is a team that started off the year well, was an exciting team to watch, that had a great turnaround from last season, but then ended up being the team that they thought they were. And they fell off all the way down to the 6th seed. Still a massive improvement, still incredible progress for the Bulls from last season to this season, but dropping off in the standings, and also the fact that they could not be a single one of the top teams in the league for the entire season is not going to sit well when looking at the story of progress throughout the year for the Chicago Bulls. And it wasn't like the Bulls fought hard in those final weeks of the season. Like, they were getting beaten badly on a lot of those games down the stretch, completely non-competitive, and it made it clear to those watching that although, yes, impressive moves to bring in DeRozan, Caruso, and Ball, it was clear there were still a lot of holes in this Bulls roster, with the fact that they had virtually no size, which limited their offensive rebounding for second chance points. They had little to no rim protection with how small they were, and they had no depth whatsoever when you look at their bench, especially when a lot of their key bench players had to step up and play in the starting lineup due to all the injuries. It was also clear that shooting was a big issue. The Bulls did not have any sharp shooters, which really hurt them in the playoffs when Lavine and DeRozan couldn't get things going. And as great as the DeRozan, Lavine, and Vucevic trio sounds when you think about their offensive abilities, it didn't matter when you had such limited defensive stoppers on the other end of the floor. So again, all factors I'm sure that went into consideration for those who voted on the executive a year, because when you look at the overall body of work from the front office of constructing this roster, this Bulls roster, there were still a lot of issues in how everyone fit together. For the Memphis Grizzlies, on the other hand, like I said, I get it. The Grizzlies literally went from being one of the worst teams in the league to last season making some noise by advancing to the playoffs by way of the play-in after finishing 9th in the West. A pretty quick first-round exit, but then this season going from being a fringe playoff team to a legit title contender, finishing 2nd in the West, winning 56 games, which I believe was a franchise record. And this team was balling even when their best player in Ja Morant was out. They were that good and fit so well together with all other complementary pieces. So I get it. I really can't be mad that Kleiman won this award. That narrative around the Grizzlies was more impressive than the Bulls. Again, it would have been a different story had the Bulls closed out the season strong, but they didn't, and that impacted AK's chances. But it's exactly why I don't like this award, because it's more so what the Bulls front office is building for the future and not just for this past season. I don't doubt that AK will likely win this award at some point in the future. This year just wasn't it because of how the Bulls crumbled at the end of the year. Honestly, that same narrative could probably be said about DeMar DeRozan and his potential MVP candidacy had the Bulls not fallen off in the way that they did. But maybe I need to save that for a separate video. Anyway, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. How do you guys feel about the Executive of the Year award, and do you think AK should have won it regardless of the Bulls fall off at the end of the season, or are you just fine with the results? Let me know in the comments, and guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.